The glass doors of the towering corporate headquarters swung open as another busy morning began. Employees hurried across the polished marble floor with coffee cups in their hands, trying not to make eye contact with the woman whose reputation for perfection had become legendary. CEO Vanessa Sterling believed that discipline built success, and to her, there was no excuse for repeated lateness. So when she saw one familiar employee rushing through the entrance nearly 20 minutes late once again, carrying a worn lunch bag and looking exhausted, she made a decision that would change several lives forever. What she didn't know was that a quiet elderly woman living across town had already begun telling a completely different story about that same man. Before we begin, if you believe kindness deserves a second chance, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with your friends, and subscribe to spread love daily. Your support helps us share more heartwarming stories that remind the world compassion still exists. Marcus Rowan had never imagined his life would become such a constant race against time. At 38 years old, he had once enjoyed a comfortable career, but after losing his wife Ava to a sudden illness 3 years earlier, every responsibility had landed on his shoulders. Every morning before sunrise he prepared breakfast for his 9-year-old daughter Hazel, packed her school bag, helped her with her hair, and made sure she smiled before leaving the tiny apartment they now called home. Between school drop-offs, doctor appointments for his aging mother Eleanor, and unreliable public transportation, arriving exactly on time had become almost impossible. Yet despite everything, Marcus never missed a deadline, never complained, and quietly became one of the company's most dependable project coordinators. Vanessa never noticed those things. Her attention stayed fixed on the attendance report stacked neatly on her desk every Monday morning. Each red mark beside Marcus's name felt, to her, like disrespect toward the company she had sacrificed everything to build. She had inherited Sterling Innovations after her father's passing and spent years transforming it into one of the city's fastest-growing technology firms. She believed emotions clouded judgment, and rules existed because fairness required consistency. If she made an exception for one employee, she feared the entire culture would begin to crumble. That Tuesday morning she called Marcus into her office. The room overlooked the entire skyline, but Marcus barely noticed the breathtaking view. His tired eyes remained fixed on the polished wooden floor as Vanessa calmly informed him that despite his strong performance, repeated lateness violated company policy. She thanked him for his service, handed him an envelope containing his final paycheck, and wished him success elsewhere. Marcus accepted the envelope without anger. He simply nodded, collected the small cardboard box containing photographs of Hazel and his late wife, and quietly walked out of the office. Many co-workers watched in silence, believing they had just witnessed another example of strict corporate leadership. Marcus stepped into the bright afternoon sunlight trying to hide the panic growing inside him. Rent was due in less than 2 weeks. Hazel's school needed payment for an educational trip she had dreamed about for months. His mother's medication costs continued to rise every month. Yet as he reached the bus stop, his phone rang. It was Eleanor reminding him not to forget to buy groceries because their elderly neighbor had invited her for tea later that afternoon. Marcus smiled despite everything and promised he would somehow manage. Across town, Eleanor slowly walked next door carrying homemade blueberry muffins. Her new neighbor, Margaret Sterling, had recently moved into the quiet neighborhood after deciding retirement felt lonely inside her enormous family estate. Neither woman knew much about the other's family history, but they quickly bonded over gardening, books, and shared afternoons watching children play outside. Margaret often mentioned how refreshing it felt to have such thoughtful neighbors. She admired how Marcus always carried heavy grocery bags for elderly residents before heading home from work. She noticed him repairing broken fences without asking for payment, mowing lawns for widows who could no longer manage alone, and checking on lonely seniors during weekends. Every evening she watched little Hazel run toward him after school, wrapping her arms around him while he laughed despite obvious exhaustion. To Margaret, this quiet man represented everything kindness should look like. One sunny afternoon Margaret visited her daughter Vanessa's luxury apartment for lunch. As always, Vanessa arrived distracted by phone calls, meetings, and endless business reports. While eating, Margaret casually began describing life in her new neighborhood. She spoke warmly about Eleanor, about little Hazel, and especially about the devoted single father living beside them. She described how he often carried groceries for several elderly residents before taking care of his own family. She explained how he had once spent hours fixing a leaking roof for a disabled veteran during a heavy rainstorm instead of resting after work. She smiled while saying the new neighbor restored her faith that truly good people still existed. Vanessa listened politely until Margaret mentioned his name. Marcus Rowan. Her fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Confused, she quietly asked if Margaret was certain. Margaret laughed softly, saying she had never met anyone so hardworking despite carrying so much responsibility alone. She explained that Marcus often arrived home late because he stopped to help people rather than rushing past them. She also revealed something Marcus himself never mentioned. Every morning before work, he personally drove his elderly mother to physical therapy after the neighborhood volunteer driver became ill. When transportation failed, Marcus sacrificed his own punctuality instead of abandoning his mother. For the first time in years, Vanessa felt uncertainty replacing confidence. That evening curiosity pulled her toward her mother's neighborhood. Parking several houses away, she watched quietly from inside her car. She saw Marcus carrying shopping bags for 3 elderly residents before helping Hazel with her homework on the front porch. Later he gently helped Eleanor walk inside while pretending not to notice her embarrassment over needing assistance. There were no cameras recording these moments, no audience applauding, and no expectation of reward. They were simply acts of everyday compassion performed by someone she had judged only through attendance records. Sleep refused to come that night. Vanessa replayed the image of Marcus leaving her office without defending himself. She realized she had never once asked why he kept arriving late. She had measured discipline but ignored humanity. The following morning she requested Marcus's employment file. Beyond attendance records she found glowing performance reviews, grateful emails from clients praising his patience, and handwritten notes from coworkers thanking him for helping them through difficult projects. Hidden beneath paperwork sat a confidential request from Human Resources recommending flexible hours because of documented family caregiving responsibilities. The request had never reached her desk. She immediately understood that the greatest mistake had not been firing Marcus. It had been failing to see him. Vanessa drove directly to Marcus's neighborhood after work. She found him repairing an elderly neighbor's wheelchair ramp while Hazel handed him tools with a bright smile. When he noticed the luxury car approaching, he stood quietly, unsure why his former employer had come. Vanessa stepped forward carrying no briefcase and no assistance. The confident executive who rarely admitted mistakes suddenly found herself struggling for words. She sincerely apologized for judging a man she had never truly known. She admitted that leadership without compassion eventually becomes blindness. Then she offered Marcus his job back, this time with flexible working hours, remote work options when necessary, and additional family support benefits that the company would extend to every employee facing caregiving responsibilities. Marcus stood silently for several moments. The apology mattered more than the job. He accepted because he believed people, just like businesses, deserved opportunities to grow. Within months Sterling Innovations became known not only for innovation but also for humanity. Employee satisfaction increased dramatically. Productivity improved because workers felt respected rather than feared. Vanessa began holding monthly meetings where employees could openly discuss personal challenges before small problems became overwhelming crises. Other companies even contacted Sterling Innovations to learn how compassion had strengthened business performance instead of weakening it. Margaret often smiled whenever she visited headquarters. She would watch employees laughing together in the cafeteria and remember the quiet conversation that had unexpectedly changed everything. She never imagined simple praise for a kind neighbor would transform an entire company. Marcus continued arriving a few minutes late occasionally, but now no one measured him by a clock alone. They measured him by the countless lives he quietly lifted every single day. Hazel proudly watched her father become a respected leader inside the company, not because he chased promotions, but because integrity naturally inspired others. Years later, Vanessa often told young executives that balance sheets revealed profits, but character revealed the true health of an organization. She credited one unexpected lesson from her mother for teaching her that behind every employee's struggle might be a story no attendance report could ever explain. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, leave a heartfelt comment, share it with someone who believes in kindness, and subscribe to spread love daily. Your support helps these stories reach people who may need hope today. Sparkling Heart special request, comment below with "Kindness always wins" if you believe one act of compassion can completely change someone's life. Sometimes the strongest leaders are not the ones who never make mistakes. They are the ones humble enough to admit them, courageous enough to make things right, and wise enough to remember that behind every face is a story waiting to be understood. And sometimes, all it takes to uncover that story is the gentle voice of a mother saying, "The new neighbor is very kind."